From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I'm Sonia Gray. With just 2 days to go before Brazilians choose their next president, religious groups have protested against the far-right candidate, Jair Bolsonaro. The demonstration in Sao Paulo was called for on Facebook by a number of different faith groups. Their shared message was, "Love will overcome hate, not him." The latest poll by Datafolha shows that Bolsonaro's lead falling by 6 points. It gives him 56% compared with 44% for the Workers' Party candidate, Fernando Haddad.
In the name of God, who we believe in the name of Christ, who we follow, to ask that love overcome hate, because we believe that this candidate, Jair Bolsonaro, that today, unfortunately, is at the head of the polls, is being moved by hate.
Human rights groups are also making a last-ditch effort to convince people not to vote for the far-right candidate. They have expressed their fear over the rise in election-related violence, especially towards women, black people and other vulnerable groups like the LGBT community. Observers have recorded at least 80 incidents of aggression related to the campaign, mostly by people claiming to support Bolsonaro.
He said, "What are you going to do?" Then he came up to me. He punched me hard here on my chest. He was agitated. He only stopped punching me because he was held back by people in his own group. But before leaving, they shouted, "Get out of here. Here everyone is Bolsonaro."
We have seen a very big escalation in violence related to these elections, and things are looking increasingly worse. 3 people have been murdered already, possibly linked to elections. A number of people have been physically assaulted. There are online aggressions and so on. It is very violent.
And Jair Bolsonaro has said his opponent, Fernando Haddad, can only win via electoral fraud. Bolsonaro's comments came after another pollster, Ibope, released a survey that showed the gap between himself and Haddad has narrowed. Meanwhile, Fernando Haddad has met with the head of the Organization of American States in Brazil for the election. At the meeting, they discussed fraud allegations and concerns over the spread of fake news during the campaign. Haddad once again criticized his opponent, Jair Bolsonaro's comment, inciting violence. More Honduran migrants are trying to join the migrant caravan that is making its way northwards through Mexico. Many of them lament the misery and insecurity they face in their home country.
This is a migrant house in the bordering municipality of Esuquipulas in Guatemala. Honduran migrants keep arriving to this place on their way to the United States. They say they are fleeing problems in their country that the government wants to hide.
They're not doing anything for poor families in Honduras. If you go to Honduras, you will be surprised by the misery, poverty, and lack of opportunities. Cameras have recorded thousands of people leaving because there's nothing in our country.
There is nothing in our country. We have no jobs, no security, so we migrate to another country hoping to find better opportunities.
In Honduras, as in most of the Central American countries, the situation is difficult. More than 67% of the people live in poverty and close to half live in a situation of extreme poverty. Corruption and bad administrations are among the reasons, according to experts.
Now they are offering jobs and thousands of other things. But why don't they give us back the money that they stole for medicine and education? How can they think people are going to go back? People prefer to die on the way to the US than suffer from hunger with their children and families.
An example for this is the neglect of agriculture, a sector that produces a lot of jobs but is affected by imports.
We work, but we cannot sell the products. Everything is expensive because everything is bought with dollars. Fertilizers and everything we work with is expensive. Either we sell our products cheaper or we cannot even sell them at all. It is a very difficult situation.
The migrant caravan is full of people looking for a better life. Meanwhile, the Honduran government has said the caravan is funded by social movements and Venezuela.
This is all fake. Our president, along with Guatemala, Mexico, and the United States, don't want to take responsibility. Migrants do not leave because they don't want to work. We want to work. Otherwise, we wouldn't risk our lives on these roads.
Honduran authorities have deployed security forces after an order from the U.S. in an attempt to block migrants from leaving their country.
We go now to our correspondent, Pablo Perez, who's on the Guatemalan side of the border with Mexico.
They have walked over 300 miles and they still have energy to play an impromptu match of soccer here at Tecunumán Central Park. This is the last city in Guatemala they're going to be in until they reach Mexican soil. This step has been a little difficult the last few days because Mexican authorities have closed the gate to the migrants and only letting them in a very small number. The day after yesterday, the day before yesterday, they admitted only 44 of them. So this one here that had been coming to Tecunumán in small numbers during all of the night are waiting for a big group that is coming from Guatemala City to see if their numbers, if they can reach over 400, 500, like the last time the Mexican government let them in, they can, force the authorities to enact the law, the asylum and refugee law that all Latin American countries have signed for. And they say that they cannot stop the people who are moving internationally for humanitarian reasons. Something that has not been enacted by all the governments lately, mostly they say because of the threats by Donald Trump's government of ending financial aid and even in the Mexican case, sending troops to the border and closing it down.
And the U.S. President Donald Trump has said he is going to send the army to the border with Mexico as the migrant caravan gets closer. Trump described the situation as a national emergency, and the U.S. Secretary of Defense confirmed that 800 soldiers are being dispatched to the border. And there are reports that the United States is considering a travel ban-like executive action that would block certain asylum seekers at the Mexican border. The proposal is said to be in the formative stages and could even be cast aside, but if President Trump approves such a plan, it would represent a dramatic escalation in border enforcement as the migrant caravan works its way through North Mexico. A provision in the Immigration and Nationality Act allows the president to ban certain classes of immigrants from entering the country if they are deemed detrimental to the interests of the United States. Transparency International is urging the European Union to review some Caribbean countries' visa-free agreements. In a recent report, the anti-corruption organization says the EU should consider following Canada's lead by suspending the visa waiver. It says recent events have raised red flags regarding the due diligence process in some of these territories. The report states that Antigua and Barbuda, Dominica, Grenada, St. Kitts and Nevis and St. Lucia offer a fast-track route to citizenship. Recently, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development flagged 20 countries in the region over the same issue. Time for a quick break. We have more news after this.
With developing events being presented through analysis. Our coverage transcends borders. With renowned journalist Walter Martinez.
Salud amigos, tripulantes de nuestra querida, contaminada y única nave espacial.
Dossier. Weekdays. Only on Telesur.
Y ponga usted las cámaras, señor director.
Mexico is voting in a referendum on the new airport for the capital. President-elect Andrés Manuel López Obrador has asked citizens to participate in the consultation that will end on Sunday. AMLO, as he is also known, has suggested the construction could be cancelled due to its high cost, but he added that the results of the referendum will be respected.
The government will respect whatever citizens decide freely and democratically. The government will also respect all existing contracts related to the project.
The Venezuelan government is condemning remarks made by the head of the European Commission about its president, Nicolás Maduro. During a news conference in Brussels on Wednesday, Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker said Maduro should be taken before an international court. In a statement, Venezuela's foreign ministry described Juncker's comments as destabilizing, hostile and nefarious. It adds that any action that seeks to harm the dignity of the Venezuelan people will not be tolerated.
Our press conference. Thank you all.
Venezuela has signed a commercial deal with Air Europa to boost tourism. The agreement will be backed by the Petro, Venezuela's cryptocurrency. The alliance will include hotel investments and a commercial alliance with Venezuela's largest airline, Conviasa. It also includes cooperation with global tour operators, mainly European, and an administrative investment in some of Venezuela's international airports. The agreement with the European company is part of the South American country's program of recovery, growth and economic prosperity. President Evo Morales said that his political party, the Towards Socialism movement, has registered 1 million voters ahead of Bolivia's first primary election, which will take place next January. Our correspondent, Freddy Morales, is in Bolivia and has more.
Morales was flanked by thousands of supporters. The deadline for all political parties to register all party members in the country was Wednesday. It's all part of Bolivia's new law, which also requires the country to hold primary elections. This will take place next January. Social movements appear to have already decided who they're going to vote for.
For us, it is irrevocable. That is decided in Congress at the national level.
President Evo Morales, even if he doesn't want to be candidate, he has to listen to people and social movements.
There is no way back. We have already decided in Congress.
President Evo Morales says his party has surpassed its goal of registering 1 million members. Morales calls them his militants.
There has been registrations of new and old militants following the Electoral Supreme Court ruling. And I have been informed there are more registration books coming from all over the country.
Meanwhile, the Constitutional Court has given President Morales the green light to present his candidacy for presidential re-election that will take place at the end of 2019.
I am sure, brothers and sisters, that with this massive show of support for registered members, the socialist movement, which is an instrument for sovereignty, is going to keep leading the way. We are sure that we will continue transformation we started, and this will be done in the best interest of the Bolivian people.
So now that Bolivians have registered party membership for the first time, the country readies itself for its first primary polls next January.
Salvadorian President Salvador Sánchez-Serán has met with his Cuban counterpart Miguel Díaz-Canel in Havana. Sánchez-Serán is on a 5-day official visit to Cuba. Diplomatic relations between the two Central American nations were restored in 2009 with the arrival of the FMLN, the Farabundo Martí National Liberation Front. They share cooperation in areas of health, culture, and the environment. The death toll for the El Mozote massacre has been revised upwards to 1,725. The government of El Salvador confirms the additional 1,000 victims. In 1981, during the Salvadorian Civil War, the army killed more than 1,700 men, women, and children. The Inter-American Court of Human Rights has condemned Guatemala for violating the rights of 49 HIV-positive patients. The court ruled that the state violated the rights to their health, their personal integrity, judicial guarantees, and judicial protection. The state was also found to have discriminated against 2 pregnant women living with HIV when it failed to provide them with adequate medical attention. The state must now pay compensation to the victims or their families. The lower house in Uruguay has approved an employment bill for people with disabilities. The bill was passed by the Senate last week. It seeks to include thousands more Uruguayans in the labor market.
After months of discussion in social and political organizations, the employment bill for people with disabilities has been finally approved. It seeks to incorporate people with disabilities into the labor market.
In Uruguay, there
are more than 500,000 people with disabilities. 80% of them are unemployed, and 50% live in the poorest households of our country. After analysing these facts, we understand the importance of this bill to give them a helping hand. It isn't charity, it's these people who are a crucial part of society.
The law says that any private company that has 25 or more permanent employees should reserve a quota of 4% for people with disabilities. But even with the advances in the bill, there are still modifications to be discussed in the next few months.
The next thing is to work on modifications to deal with parents of children with disabilities. This is a very important and fundamental aspect. The effort that parents make to take care of their children with disabilities is huge, and therefore should have a differentiation with regards to the days of license payment in labour and work area.
The trade union movement has recognized the advancement with this new law, but it criticizes some of the changes brought in the bill, especially about the limitation put on the number of applicants.
We didn't have anything for people with disabilities before, and now we have an employment bill for people with disabilities. Some of the things we are asking for have been dropped in the bill, but we will continue fighting for them.
The bill was passed in the House by a large majority. It will now be referred to the President for his approval, after which it will be enforced.
We'll take another short break now. World News is next.
Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your Green Zone. Wednesdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. At least 14 children were stabbed at a kindergarten in China. A woman wielding a kitchen knife stormed the building and launched the attack. At least 2 of the children succumbed to their injuries, while the others remain hospitalized. The perpetrator has since been arrested. She reportedly told the police she was mistreated by the Chinese government, but it's still not clear why she targeted those children. Rescue and recovery efforts continue after 19 people were killed in flash floods near the Dead Sea in Jordan. Most of them were students and their teachers who were in a bus that was swept away. The vehicle was carrying 37 middle school pupils and 7 members of staff to the hot springs. Just over 30 people were eventually brought to safety during a dramatic rescue operation. Rescuers are hoping that the death toll will not rise.
There was a school trip of 37 female and male students with 7 supervisors, meaning there are 44 people in this location. The water came up strongly for 4 to 5 kilometers, which is the location that is between the pool and the bridge, and near the beginning of the Dead Sea. There were people who ended up in the sea water, and there were people who managed to reach the rocks and save themselves. Thank God we managed to save 13 people without any injuries.
One United Nations expert believes the Saudi state is responsible for the murder of the journalist Jamal Khashoggi.
It is not quite possible for the state to wash its hands from the behavior of those actors, whether or not somebody even higher up has requested those acts. You know, where do we stop where do we begin, where do we stop our construction of the state? They were representing the state when they acted as they acted. The state cannot wash its hands from its responsibilities.
So it doesn't matter whether the Crown Prince or the King say they didn't know?
Of course it matters, but that does not mean that the Saudi state is not responsible.
Meanwhile, people gathered outside the Saudi consulate in Istanbul in a candlelight vigil demanding justice for the murdered journalist. One man, his hands painted red, wore a mask depicting the face of the Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman. Others carried cardboard images of Khashoggi's face and signs reading that they were friends of Khashoggi.
When the news was leaked and we heard that he was killed, I felt very sad for the loss of such a fair journalist. We're all journalists and we are all following the same path, calling for freedom of expression. We're also living abroad, so everyone is afraid that they might face the same fate as Jamal Khashoggi.
My daughter asked me why we were coming here today, so I told her that this is for humanity and that we stand against the incident that happened.
And the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has also announced that the chief prosecutor of Saudi Arabia will fly to Turkey to meet with the authorities to discuss the Khashoggi case.
The Saudis are sending the chief prosecutor on Sunday to Turkey, where he will meet with our prosecutor general in Istanbul to conduct discussions. Let's see what will come out of it.
China and Japan have signed agreements to strengthen cooperation during Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's groundbreaking 3-day visit to Beijing. Abe and Chinese Vice Premier Liu He inked a $30 billion U.S. currency swap deal amid rising trade tensions with the United States. Relations between the two countries have been strained since diplomatic relations resumed in 1972. Super Typhoon Yutu will continue to charge towards southeastern Asia this weekend after battering the Mariana Islands in the western Pacific. For the next few days, Yutu will churn in the Philippine Sea. Cruises, cargo ships, and other seafaring transport will need to be rerouted or risk being battered by high winds and dangerous sea levels. This weekend, the powerful typhoon is expected to pass close to the northern Philippines and southern and eastern Taiwan. A 6.8 magnitude earthquake struck off the coast of Greece. It was felt strongly throughout the popular tourist island of Zante. It was also felt in the capital Athens and as far as Italy. The tremor occurred less than 1 hour after a 5.0 magnitude quake hit the same area. There were no reports of extensive damage or casualties. Suspected explosive devices mailed to high-profile figures in the United States may have been sent from Florida. According to reports, investigators believe at least one package originated there. Former Vice President Joe Biden and the actor Robert De Niro were the latest targets. Similar packages were also sent to the former President Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, among others. The FBI confirms that the white powder found on one of the pipe bombs was not a biological threat.
What I can say is that at various times over the last few days, 10 suspicious packages were located at multiple locations in New York, Maryland, Florida, Delaware, and Los Angeles. Law enforcement responded, and each package was collected by experts, and examinations are now underway at the FBI lab in Quantico. As to the devices located in New York, which contained a powder, the initial analysis indicates that the powder in those particular envelopes did not present a biological threat. Other analysis is ongoing.
And the U.S. President Donald Trump is taking a jab at those who he says blame him for the mail bombs. He tweeted, "Funny how lowly rated CNN and others can criticize me at will, even blaming me for the current spate of bombs and ridiculously comparing this to September 11 and the Oklahoma City bombing. Yet when I criticize them, they go wild and scream, it's just not presidential." Well, if you have nightmares about the earth opening up and swallowing you, you might want to look away. 2 Turkish women were swallowed by a collapsing pavement. CCTV footage showed the women, one a doctor, the other a nurse, disappearing in a cloud of dust. Bystanders rushed to their assistance and pulled them out of the hole. Fortunately, they're okay, but they sustained minor injuries. Okay, that was shocking. We've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telestirtv.net/English. For views in Africa, remember we are on Starstat channel 461 in South Africa and channel 539 in Nigeria. But everyone can follow us on social media because we are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Telestir English, I'm Sony Gray. Thank you for watching.